Payten, Innovity, Beams VC, and our session partner Rico. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to segue and transition into the next set of dialogue and conversation, which is going to be highlighting and elucidating how startups move beyond boundaries. And to maneuver this part of the conversation and panel discussion, I'd like to call on stage our moderator, beginning with Mr. Prakash Jaiswal, Managing Director and Head of Business Banking, MSME Startup HSBC India. And joining him on stage is going to be Mr. Chiranth Patil, co-founder at Riskcovry. Followed by him would be Mr. Mitul Doshi, Head of Finance and Ops in Invideo. Mr. Vinayak Shrivastav, co-founder and CEO at Videoverse. And finally, we also have Mr. Vivek Tiwari, founder and CEO at Medikabazaar. So with this context, I think let's get the fireside chat started.
Check, check. I can. Check, check, check.
Hello.
Yeah. Mitul, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. Yeah. Hi. Yeah. Vivek. Check, check.
This is fine. This is fine. We'll wait for some people to come. As we start, so we'll wait for some minutes now. Good afternoon. Welcome to the panel which is titled Startups Beyond Boundaries. But before I begin, I wanted to say that we at HSBC are quite excited to be part of GFF. This is the second year we are kind of participating in Fest and looks the outside environment looks quite exciting. So really looking forward to the event. Coming to the panel, at the subject kind of suggest, it's about how startups, and startup is a word we're using to kind of describe early stage tech businesses, new age businesses, which are trying to build businesses in a very different way, using a lot of tech. Uh, and I would start with one analogy. Let's say 10, 15 years back, for a business to think to go international, you had to create a playbook of your own domestically and then think about international. But the whole startup ecosystem and the new age economy has really changed that. You can see founders uh, trying to get international right from the beginning. So the international is a part of the playbook right from the beginning. On that note, I wanted to kind of introduce my panelist. So I have Chiranth. Chiranth is from a very interesting company, and I'm going to not steal the thunder. He is from a media tech company. Uh, and I'm going to, so Chiranth is from, I'm sorry. Chiranth is actually from a very interesting red tech company, insurance tech company, and I'm going to allow him to talk about his business. I have Mitul. Mitul is from the media tech company, very interesting work they're doing. I have Vinayak, again from a media tech company, and I have Vivek, who runs the largest B2B medical kind of platform. Uh, uh, so first, let's start with the first question, and my question is to everyone. Do introduce your business and also talk about why international for your business, right? Why did you think of going international as a part of a business model? So why don't we start with you? Sure.
Sure. So thanks. Lovely to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm Chiranth. I'm one of the co-founders of Riskcovry. Riskcovry is an insurance in a box. So think what payment gateways allow brands to do to accept digital payments from their end customers. We are similar to that, except that we help to distribute insurance. So it's a one-stop shop platform for which is a combination of technology, license, and everything in between to help large distribution platforms like banks, brokers, fintechs, mobility, anyone actually, any business that wants to distribute insurance, we are a one-stop shop. So that's a little bit about us. As far as the question of why international, I guess. Well, you need to kind of break it down, and we were chatting about it the other day as well. We kind of need to break it down into some sort of an international thesis. And for us, it was really the if and the why has to check before you get into the what and the how, right? So the if and the why of international growth for us was a no-brainer, or is a no-brainer. We are very early as far as our international growth is concerned, relative to some of my co-panelists here who have more mature business models outside of domestic markets as well. So in our particular case, the if and the why really germinated from the India TAM itself, right? So in B2B enterprise tech in India, to think about it a little anecdotally, there is hardly any precedence of any B2B enterprise tech that is an Indian startup that serves the only Indian market and is a unicorn, right? The reason is because there are pricing pressures here. There is sort of a fair amount of supply chain constriction, fragmentation, though it's a very interesting and a large market. So there are chances that sort of, and even if you look at on the fintech side, there have not been a whole lot of, B2B tech startups that have actually become big only by serving the Indian market alone. So we don't think we are going to be any exception from that sense, though there is, that playbook has not been written. So for us, it was really a function of greater monetization and revenue growth, scalability, and more importantly, the backdrop to that was that by definition, what we do is globally scalable. We essentially help any brand to distribute insurance, which means that that same thing can apply to any market as well. So the if and the why, the buttress of the if and the why was really that, by definition, this is something that become a large global business. So that was the ambition meeting the business requirement as well. So that was the if and the why, if that helps.
So in a way, I can say you're building in India, but you're building for the world.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at sort of, I think Indian startups are that much more better suited, especially if you're in the API infra business model, which we are in, we are better suited to actually dominate this space globally. If you think about it, we have been sort of, business models have been born here on the back of the India stack, like UPI and other, and sort of and sort of open API based principles are something that is deeply rooted in our societal sort of demographic, right? And for us to kind of take that and take a product that is built for India, by India to the world, right? I mean, that's where sort of we see the growth trajectory. So it's very early days. We just launched in the UAE, where we have tied up with the private office of one of the royal families, and in a JV that is accelerating our go-to market there, because think of it as a red carpet treatment to enter that particular country, right? So that has been it's very, very early days, but it has been an interesting sort of ride, and yet to really acquire our first customer directly on our books and sort of book revenue, but sort of a fair amount of advanced. We are in advanced stages. But yeah, so I don't know if I'll be able to throw a lot of light as far as international. I think perhaps the very early stage founders who are looking at growth outside of India, one or two sort of things that will probably like to share would be that think through the if and the why really, really well, and sort of because some of these things are irreversible, right? So yeah, more along those lines, but yeah, it really starts with the if and the why.
Sure. Okay, that's interesting to hear. Mitul, why don't we hear from you?
Yep. Thanks, Prakash. I think really great coming here. Good afternoon, everyone. So basically, I'm VP Finance and the Global Head of Finance for Invideo. Obviously, Sanket is the founder, and he's not been able to make it up for the entire thing. So I think for us, Invideo was a very clear idea. Like we want everyone to create videos or edit videos, which can actually happen online. So today, if you want to actually create videos, you need a lot of softwares on your machine. And why do you want this? Like if you want to tell your small stories to the Instagrams or WhatsApp of the world that are just coming out with the reels and a lot of other stuff which happens. So Invideo is that kind of a software which helps you create these videos online within 5 minutes. And you're just creating the wow videos with all the help of templates and other beautifications which you require. And you simply download it. And what you're doing is like you're just paying us a SaaS fees. That's kind of a model which we work. Now, obviously, when we talk about videos and stuff, so global was always a plan, because you will not restrict your customers only to India level. But because this kind of software is actually valuable and needed across the world, so that's where, so we are like present at 190 plus countries. Obviously, when we wanted to global, there was some challenges which we faced initially. But yeah, obviously, with the help of a lot of connects and with our payment gateways, which are right now available globally. So you're sitting in India and you can actually access to these things. I think that's kind of a development which has happened throughout the world today. So yeah, I think that was very key and a simple thing for us. Invideo is already a global company, and we help you create videos and edit videos online.
That's good to hear. So what you're saying is the product itself and the consumer segment itself is global, right? You wouldn't restrict yourself to one location.
Yeah, exactly. If you see today, so let's just take an example of TikTok. TikTok is like globally, it has scaled like so far. Even you talk about Facebook, you talk about Instagram. So video is kind of a thing which people need. And that was one of the key things which our founder saw it, and he thought like, let's build it from now. Obviously, we were a little early in the market, but when we know that this thing is coming up, we were already there with our product. So we actually developed our product in such a way that we can even cater the global segment.
Sure. Vinayak, why don't we hear from you?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here. What Videoverse is today, and I'm sure everyone loves watching IPL here or watching any of the live sports. We are the ones that create key moments and highlights. Like Invideo creates and edits content for social, for individual users. We do this for enterprise companies. So if you have been watching IPL for the last couple of years, we have been at the heart of the technology, creating these replays that you've been seeing, on your TV screens, on the digital apps of the Hotstars of the world, right? When we started expanding, and this is back in 2020, when we started expanding beyond India, For us, it was very simple that the market within India started to get niche for us, right? Because the media industry is dominated by maybe 5 or 6 players. Beyond that, there's a long list and long tail that you can cater to. But if you really have to have global aspirations in serving the broadcasting units across the globe, you have to go global. So we went global very early in our journey. Back in 2020 itself, we started looking at the international markets. What that meant for us is obviously we had a very different thought process when we went international. We needed to have feet on the ground because we're a very heavy enterprise selling product. That means it's not easily sellable online. We cannot have a digital GTM created here. So we needed a very offline GTM to be created where we needed people on ground. So we started hiring early in the international markets. Today we have employees across 6 different countries. We are serving more than 28 countries right now, roughly around 300 plus customers. But with the scale, what we have realized is you pick your markets that you really want to win, right? And you can replicate what you do in one market. And that's exactly what we have been doing for the last 2 years. We replicated what we did in the Indian market, in the UK market, in the US market, and so on and so forth. Because each market eventually has a similar or a slightly different playbook. But the sales processes that you set for yourself is going to be one and the same. And like the other two panelists kept saying, though we always knew that we had global aspirations, we ended up taking smaller steps, right? We did not want to go aggressive. Though we ended up raising a lot of money, we did not want to go aggressive because it's very easy to kind of just try and kind of burn this money through and through without actually defining what you're really going to get out of it. So we took it slow. We took a lot of time compared to what the other enterprise companies would take in terms of growing. But I think eventual results for us have really proved that we have taken all the steps correctly. So that's what Videoverse is, and that's why we went global. Kind of an ambition has been stuck to us.
Sure. Thanks, Vinayak. Vivek, why don't we hear from you about?
Sure. Thank you, Prakash. Thank you, HSBC and Fintech platform for having us here today. So Medikabazaar is essentially the largest B2B medical supply platform in India now. And the aspiration always has been to go global. If I just connect, what B2C and B2B platforms have in difference, I think as B2B platform, we have more of global connect. We have more customers who are coming onto the platform who see supply chain problems. We have more number of manufacturers who want to come and access that platform. Because as we all know that medical care is inevitable and you need to have access to care or access to healthcare delivery all over the globe. Despite of whether an innovator is sitting here in India or it's sitting somewhere outside India, doesn't matter. So access to market is quite a key out here. So that's one of the primary reason why a platform like Medikabazaar should be looking at more of a global opportunity and not just India as a market. In fact, just to highlight, and we all know that during COVID, what we saw was that real supply chain problems coming, out in our awareness, and what we could see that there are big challenges coming up, especially looking at the basic things, what like face mask and all of them. That's been one of the primary reasons for this, this kind of an opportunity to be driven with more of global market driven factors. And this is what Medikabazaar does. And now we have scaled up and we have presence across 18 countries from a customer base and direct established entities around 4 markets beyond India.
Perfect. No, so what I gather from hearing from all of you is that there are multiple factors which took you international, right? For somebody it was technology, somebody it was the customer base, for somebody it was the supply chain, right? But one thing is in common, which is the point I wanted to make, is that you guys went international right in the beginning, right? You didn't wait for a domestic playbook to be created and then go international, which was the thing what traditional businesses did. Okay, let me move on to the next one. And so when you go international, in a way it's an uncharted territory. So there are challenges, there are risks, there are regulatory risk. Why don't I hear from all of you guys of how did you face, what did you face, how did you maneuver them? And a lot of those will be very specific to your industry, which will be of usefulness to the audience. So why don't we start with you, Mitul?
Yeah, I mean, see, as I told you, like when we wanted to go global, obviously there were challenges. But we knew that, like for a company like us, our major thing is like, like setting up the entity was not an issue for us, just because obviously you have employees abroad, and the kind of people who can actually help you out with, and then you have your founders who are ready to travel to different countries and stuff. But the most important thing was the payment gateways, and the banks. So these are the two very key things when you actually go abroad. Like, so payment gateways has to help you cater internationally. Now imagine we have like 190 countries the customers paying us. Now obviously you cannot set up entities across all the world. Like, so you need to have a system where you are accepting different currencies to a single currency which you actually wanted to have in your bank and stuff. Now your banks will also obviously have to help us cater that kind of currencies which we really want to do. So as I told you, like the setup and stuff was not a bigger challenge for us, just because uh, our previous experience come with that kind of a mindset, and we always had a mindset of going global. So we already planned our move way before even starting up our sales in global entities. So I think two important things was our payment gateways was really important, that we got it fixed, and our banks, which was like obviously the HSBC bank has really helped us to do that up. So I think this was the two things which we thought was a bigger challenge. But apart from that, I think everything was really streamlined and cool, because we planned it like way before what we wanted to do about it.
Okay, that's interesting. Chiranth, what did you face? And you were at very early stage of the journey.
Yeah, I was just
So-
going to say that, 190 countries, and here we are yet to acquire our first international customer. So very diabolical state of sort of, business maturity. But, coming back to risk, I mean, we did our sort of analysis in terms of what are the key, risks. And broadly, the risks are, a combination of strategic risks, where sort of, can the business model be sort of easily displaced or disrupted in that particular geography. Then there is execution risk, very tactical risk, whether you have enough money, whether you have enough people, when you have enough sort of throughput in that particular sort of space. Does the market itself want a solution that you bring to the table, right? So no two geographies are alike. And then, as you rightly mentioned, regulatory risk, right? So at least for us, relative to some of the other panelists here, we live in a very regulated environment. So for us, having the right sort of, regulatory kosher kind of a go-to-market strategy was very important. So we took the step only when all these three things were like, we could understand, assimilate, sort of, we knew what the sort of the top end of the risk was going to be in terms of, what does that mean to our sort of overall, company? Are we biting more than you can chew, given where we are, etc., etc. So we took calculated sort of, decisions based on sort of understanding that risk profile. And it's not to say that those risks are not have gone away. It's just that we know what those risks are. It's all about going into these markets with eyes open, right? So that's why it can dovetail back to the earlier point of the if and the why of international market expansion has to be spot on, right? And I think some amazing founders have come in and said that if you can plan things out well, to the extent that you can, especially in regulated sort of spaces like ours, you can try and hedge a lot of those execution risks that will happen once you kind of actually take a decision and go there. So
And maybe when you go to your next market, you're better prepared.
yeah, and see, actually, that's absolutely right, because in our line of work, we can expand in multiple countries very quickly, because there are you start off with proof of concepts, right? In our particular business model, connecting insurers with distributors. And that doesn't mean that you connect all distributors and all sort of, insurers in a country and exhaust that before moving on to the next market. You can pick and choose those battles depending on sort of what it means for you tactically in terms of business growth and scalability of the platform and so on and so forth. So, for example, companies like M2P, right, who are amazing companies run by amazing founders in the banking infra space, fintech infra space, if you will. They went between 2 rounds. They probably went in 12.5 markets. Right, so there is nothing stopping us from kind of doing that as well, and that's the beauty of building capital efficient asset light business models which are based on API first kind of principles, and we hope to kind of make good on that potential.
Vivek, what has been your, how have you navigated the challenges and risks?
Sure, Prakash. Before I do that, let me first try to explain how do you access markets, right? You access market two ways. Either you try to go to a market which has a successful business model like yours, and you try to replicate and you try to do something out there. Or you try to get market access to those markets where you have some ready customers coming out and you have a ready market for you to access it, right? And when you talk of the risk overall, you have many-fold risk out there. You have risk of, you have, the greater risk is economic risk. If you can access market like Ukraine and tomorrow if there is a war, what happens? The second risk is regulations. It can go really left or right, you don't know what will happen. Finance, especially fintechs, are always under a lot of regulations. Your media is always under a lot of regulations, a lot of government policies around it. Similarly, healthcare also is under a lot of regulation. You need to be mindful of the quality of execution you do and the care you do. So when we talk about the risk, it is manifold. But I think as a founder, it is important for you to access that risk and to really look at opportunities which you can do a calculated, kind of risk accessibility, and you can move with that. I think the best is to understand which markets could have some kind of customers which could come to your platform. Like in our case, it was very simple to see. We could see a lot of customers coming from Middle East during COVID on our platform, and it was a natural flow of customers happening. Or we could see a lot of customers coming from Southeast Asian markets. We could see a lot of customers coming from Eastern European markets, Latin American markets, because these are the markets where you have the largest supply chain problems. So it was a natural progression for us to look at markets which had the most supply chain problems, like markets like India, which were big, which had deep, healthcare private-driven markets, which had larger populations, which had lower healthcare spend, which had better or poor access to healthcare, I would say, may not have better access to healthcare. So these markets were always preferred markets for us. We'll never go and try our hand out in US market, because we know that India as a country, we are far, far away from the quality of healthcare index what we see in markets outside India. So I think from our business perspective, these are the few things what we did, and we really did some good assessment before we jumped into a market.
Interesting. Vinayak, what's your take on it?
हमने तो इतना सोचा नहीं था. मतलब when we wanted to sell in the UK market and the European market and US market, the first thing was hire people there and let's go and crack a couple of clients. We did not think about GDPR. We did not think about compliance issues that we'll run into, the taxation issues we'll run into. Maybe all of these people have thought so, but for us it was very clear that let's first try and crack a couple of customers and then देखा जाएगा क्या होना है. मतलब compliance ये सब बाद में करेंगे. We had a very different journey. Obviously, we learnt while we were trying to deploy all of this, right? We hired people before we could even understand what compliances in a normal country is. Like UK में hire करने के बाद क्या compliances होते हैं, what are the labor laws, labor taxes क्या हैं, ये सब हमें बाद में पता चला. मतलब and I'm glad that we took that approach, because if we had sat down and tried understanding each market differently, maybe we would have taken a much longer time to do things the way we would have done it, right? And obviously we had support from the best in the world possible, right? We have EY backing us, we had HSBC supporting us, but that didn't mean that we didn't get the right advice. It's just that we said that let's first hire, let's get the customers, and then figure out the rest of the things. So at times, obviously, our compliances were all over the place, because when we did hire, 2 महीने हम salary नहीं दे पा रहे थे because our compliances were not sorted. And so then we had to open an entity in UK, we had to open an entity in US and figure out how the wiring has to be done for their salary payments. We had to figure out how to collect payments. Collecting payments and bringing it back to India also was another hassle for us. So we had to figure out if there is at least 20% concentration revenue coming in from a specific market, you open a subsidiary in that particular market. So we did all of this on the fly, right? We did it while we were growing, while we were acquiring customers. We did not stop for kind of making processes set in one place and say that we will first figure out how to do things and then get clients. I think that approach helped us a lot, because today what we have learned from it is absolutely irreplaceable. The knowledge that we have gained from failing and not understanding and then learning the processes, I think we're definitely well equipped right now that we can sell in any country in the world, and we don't really have to worry about any of the local compliances, GDPR, and how whatever happens really.
Interesting. So one thing common I hear from all you guys that one you do. So Vinayak did not do a lot of planning and thinking, but an assessment is required, right? Where to go, how do you meet challenges, and another common thing is that you do get better uh, with time. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah?
You get better with time, but the important thing is to just assess which market you want to sell in, right? Like if you know that you want to sell in the UK market, you have anyways narrowed it down. Now, obviously, once you've narrowed it down and you know what the customers you want to go after and you have the right set of people, whatever GTM you kind of take a approach on digital ho ya offline low, if you know what market you're selling in, everything else will follow in place, right? And I think that's the approach we took. That we figured out the market and then we started putting the other pieces of the puzzle together over a period of time.
Perfect.
I think just one thing was very different from us was we were B2C first. So I think B2C, we knew that our customers are going to come globally. And I think hence, I think we already knew that this planning has to be there. I think just because of B2C, we know that we have different currencies, different people coming in, and we had to get the setup done.
Yeah. Okay. So I have one more question, and this is often talked about when you go international. What kind of corporate structure, holding structure should you have? And there are various debates, right? A lot of people want to base the entire investment, debt in India. Some people go overseas. When you go overseas, some people choose a different location than others. And there are various aspects to it. There's never one correct answer for it. Vivek, why don't I get to hear your views on that?
Sure, Prakash. I think it all depends on the kind of investors you have, first of all. Because investors essentially are a big determining factor in the quality or kind of a structure you want to maintain. Most of the startups out of India would want to maintain a holdco outside India, and they want to then go with a structure of having that holdco owning different businesses in different geographies or different countries to look at. Many startups who are aspiring to be, say, looking at an IPO or a public market in India would want to stay in India and then look for global market expansion through a holdco structure. In fact, we are one of such startups who are doing that. So it all depends on what kind of corporate structure you want to follow. There are various routes to do that. I think you can actually add more value to it from a large global banking perspective, because you would have seen all of them, and since we are already working with HSBC as a banking platform, we know how things are. But as I feel that it is more to do with few factors in place. First is that what kind of investors you have, whether these are global investors who would want much more flexible tax structures around your corporate structure, or you have more of the investors coming out of India and they would want to have a different kind of a structure. So it all depends on quality or kind of investors you have. And more than that, in fact, if you have aspirations to hive off those businesses outside sometime, or maybe create a separate ownership structure sometime, it all relates to that. So in my view, it is more to do with your company, with your business, with your sector, and it's not very, very standard. No businesses are standard. Something for which can happen for a media tech cannot happen for health tech. It has to be driven with different kind of industries. And as we talked more about regulatory, more about economic risks and all of that, I think this all relates to that.
And if I can, examine this question from another dimension of customers, does customers or the target segment play a role where how you should decide your structure?
Yes, it does. The classic example is Amazon. See, Amazon is a marketplace in India. It runs inventory business in US. Because the Indian regulation does not allow DPI, the main apex body of forming regulations around startups, does not allow the FDI-funded B2C platforms to run inventory model in India. If Amazon had to run the inventory model in India, I don't know the scale of its operation on the way it would have gone the way it has gone in US. But it has to be driven by also, the factors that how customers or what kind of market realities are, how you are perceiving things. So yes, as you rightly pointed out, I think it is also related to the customers and all your local driving forces behind it.
Chiranth, what's your view on this? Again, your business is all about the target segment in that place, right? You don't have international Uh, uh, is insurance tech is all about domestic target segment?
For that market, yes. So typically, so if you are in the UAE for that matter, and you want to distribute insurance, you have to, get the product constructs from local insurers. It's not like you can get it from Bahrain and sell it in UAE. So in that sense, it is like domestic and localized. But just to build on what Vivek mentioned, like there's definitely an investor lens. You mentioned about a customer lens, and absolutely there's no one size fits all. There is a strategic sort of growth sort of implications as well. Your corporate structure is really sort of what do you know here and now, and what do you want to be there, and then what are the sort of the various corporate governance structures that allow you to get there, right? So that's the simple approach or framework we kind of incorporated, and a lot of it was actually, uh, you know, uh, chances are that there are precedences there already, right? So it's not like these things. There are only finite number of business models and finite number of corporate governance or corporate sort of structures. So taxation is a big lens as well, right? So how you repatriate that money back, if at all you do. Your future sort of funding aspirations as well. There have been a fair number of startups that have actually uh, without actually doing a lot of international work, they tend to be international companies, and then but their most of their revenue base is actually coming in from India. That has its own merits and demerits, but you need to kind of weigh that across a bunch of things. So it's one of the most complex things, I would say, in terms of international market go to market, what your corporate structure is. Professionals who can help you, through and through will be, chances are that founders won't know that off the top of their head. So, you'll need to rely on at least we relied on a bunch of sort of service providers.
So I can share my observation, and whenever I have posed this question to either the advisors or the founders or the CXOs, nobody has the same reason, right? You have seen people choosing a territory to list or to structure their corporate based on valuation, which is linked to investor. Some people lead it to regulation and taxation, saying it's easier to protect IPR in Singapore, so let's go to Singapore. We have customers where India is the holding company for like 10 entities across the world, and you have examples where Singapore is the holding company for all the overseas entity, including India, which is actually the largest. So you have cases like that. So it's always a combination. Investor does play a role because they decide, they give you the funds. But it's also the customer I have seen. A lot of people have decided to list in India because they say the whole potential of the customer segment is in India. My investor can be in US or Singapore, but I would want to list in India. So it's always a combination we hear. In fact, our playbook comes a bit from there. You want to be in Singapore, we can help you there. You want to go to US. A lot of tech companies want to be holdco in US because the investor or the depth of the technology understanding is much higher. So it's a combination, I would say. Okay, I have one last question, and maybe we can do a quick one, all of us, and then we leave maybe 10 minutes, 7-8 minutes for some Q&A from the audience. And this is a, I'm biased to ask this question. So when you go international, you have a lot of service providers who help you do business there. One of the service providers is a bank. What do you typically expect from a service provider, including a bank? And Vivek, we will start with you.
Sure, Prakash. What a pertinent question it is. So, I believe, as business, you need a lot of flexibility. As Vinayak was telling that you start as a founder, you don't think too much about compliances, regulations, taxation. You don't think too much about the impending issues which could come in future. I think what you need from a partner, especially from a banking partner, is more reliance towards those areas. Doing the right thing, right transactions, does not get into the wrong side of doing transaction. At times in international, because India is highly regulated market for FEMA, we have seen all of that happening. In fact, many times we are not able to accept payments which come from outside India for shipping goods because somewhat the country or the payment is not acceptable. There are different reasons for it, or maybe you cannot accept payment from some other customer who is trying to buy for some other customer. So in B2B especially, there are a lot of regulations. Business buying, there are a lot of regulations. So we would we would largely look from the banking partner is to really look at those problems, offer flexibility, take out some of the the real-time challenges and trying to help founders with those kind of challenges to look at. I think HSBC plays a great role out here because obviously it's a global bank and it has a great strength across markets. So I think that's what essentially I look at as a founder, especially.
Vinayak, what would you say?
For us, it was all about relationship. HSBC was the first bank we opened our account with when we started the company. The team at HSBC had been super helpful. It was also when we were going international, they were there helping us understand various things. Like I said, right, we took strides before understanding what will be the implications for it. At times, the relationship manager was there for us and telling us every now and then that this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do. Where he did not have answers for us, he made sure he got the right advisors for us to give us the answers. And that kind of relationship really gives you the comfort that you're banking with someone who helps you understand everything, though you might not know a lot of the things in the process. I think that was a major thing for us. Otherwise, बाकी सब तो मतलब internet banking सब जगह होता ही है. So for us, it was all about relationship eventually.
So a bit of a helping hand,
Yeah,
which is
helping
based
hand.
on knowledge and familiarity.
Absolutely.
Okay. Mitul, how has been your...
So, I mean, most of the things have been already spoken about, and I think that's the best thing. So one of the things which we really wanted was, so after COVID, we know that digital has played a very important role. So are the banks going from a paper business to a digital business? That's kind of a very, very important thing which was there. Like I was been talking to our RM and like, code, we have been going out from token and we're coming to OTP. So we remember that kind of days which is there, and that has really come a long way. So you're not attending or not going to the bank branches. I think that solves a bigger problem. Because sometimes you need the money on the same day. Because
So what you're saying is, what you want from bank is not to see the banks, right?
not to see the banks, but most importantly is, yaar paisa hame on the spot chahiye, because that is something which we all rely on, because startups are like are really a kind of a place where you are relying on this banking partner just to make sure that the compliance side, obviously the RBI and everyone comes into play, but if you guys are going to help us on that, then we don't have to be like really rely on that part of stuff. So that really helps us. And secondly, as Vinayak mentioned, like relationships. So if you're calling the person and if the problem is getting solved the daytime, that's the best thing. Customer service is something which is really, really important nowadays. And I think that's kind of a different thing which has come up with HSBC for us.
Okay. Chiranth, what's your...
Our journey with HSBC started slightly differently. Basically, when we went in a seed round, the fund that led the round had an HSBC account. And we had to get that money, sort of that capital had to come in from the US, so, and across a bunch of other jurisdictions as well. And the advice that we got was like, if you have an HSBC account, it's easier in terms of, the compliances and sort of all the operational sort of things that came along. But over a period of time, I think it's been a, the R word, the relationship word, right? Sort of has kind of, grown, right? So, and I think the difference between a good bank and a great bank is really that partnership mindset, right? It's not just about the CASA and you're just another account. It's more about sort of how do you help, especially younger companies, startups like us, be that extended arm that always has your back, right? So from that sense, thanks for all the support.
Sure. No, I think what you say is my favorite. I think businessmen want his service provider to be invested as well in his journey, right? It's just not about the charges or the product, but is he invested in my journey? And I think Mitul said a good thing. You would need responsive service providers. Banking is just an example. Okay, we have some time left. We have 5 minutes. Maybe I'm hoping we can take a little more time. We can take some questions from the audience.
Check. Firstly, thank you so much. For me, we got both the sides of the dilemma. When you approach a startup beyond the boundaries, is it you prepare for it or is it you go there and improvise? Vinayak, from the heart to you. So, was it a calculated decision or was it a natural instinct that comes to you?
As founders, we make stupid decisions all the time. I think it was more of a instinct that we knew the market we wanted to go after. And we're like, jo hoga dekha jayega baad mein. The typical mindset that you have. That's exactly the approach we took. We're like, we knew the market we want to go into. बाकी जो होगा बाद में देखा जाएगा and we'll figure it out. And that's what startup founders are, right? बाद में जुगाड़ लेंगे जो करना है. मतलब, if you start figuring out everything on day one, you're going to waste a lot of time trying to figure out things and trying to put processes in place. Might as well try and do something and then try and put processes. The implications to it is not going to be a lot. It's just that you will save a lot of time. In the other process, you will waste a lot of time. So that's exactly what we have done. I think that's what I tell everyone who I speak to. करो बाद में हो जाएगा. मतलब बैठे हुए हैं, you pay money to all these advisors, they will make the room easy for you and the life much easier for you. As simple as that.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, when you say that that simple, is not that simple, but I think you should have a lot of guts for it. My question is, you guys have not addressed the part of marketing as a company which is going locally. Yes, we've had tried and tested methods, but when it comes to international, as a startup, putting your presence there, making a name for yourself, the biggest challenge is marketing. And how do you manage that internationally to see how you minimize your acquisition cost and spread the word for who you are internationally? So if you can address that, anyone from the panel.
So marketing is not specific to countries or regions. Marketing as a concept is a global concept. You have different kinds of marketing which you adopt based on your budgets, based on whatever you want to do. I think it all relates to the different business models you have. If you're too much on B2B side, you don't want to go and put up hoardings around it, or you don't want to put up TV ads around it. But if you're more on B2B side, you want to do more of, say, customer connect programs, you want to directly reach out to customers, you want to figure out those. So I think if you see marketing as a platform or as a concept is a global concept, it has to be more business specific, customer specific, your country specific also at times, because many marketing concepts may not be allowed in different countries based on the local sentiments out there. I'm not sure how many of you know the Nike story in Middle East, because there was a brand called Nike Air and it had big backlash because it was written something which was offensive to Allah. So obviously you have to be very, very specific to the local sentiments around marketing. I think that's what I can add to your question.
I mean, if I may, I tend to agree with Vivek, right? Marketing is a very philosophical thing, and fundamentally, marketing, the end, just thinking first principles, the end goal of marketing is either to bring in new customers or sort of, retain customers or whatever. One is a customer lens, then there is an employee or a talent lens, and then there is a sort of a capital base or a shareholder lens, right? So in most cases, you're either sort of building a brand or building sort of a base to add to the top of the funnel, right? So from that sense, regardless of your going beyond boundaries, that first principles approach doesn't change. What changes are the softer elements. I think Vivek mentioned about sort of sensitivities, local sensitivities. Then there are sort of local sort of accepted practices. As a B2B tech company, very our marketing is very different from, say, a B2C marketing B2C model, where you're looking at that growth playbook happening by way of customer acquisition, and then sort of that just using your product and then sort of flying off that wheel, right, and being that sort of being part of that growth playbook. In our case, it is very hand to mouth combat. It's sales driven. It is not as much as marketing driven, right? So or business development driven. So for us, marketing is about brand building. It's more about sort of getting the best talent to the door, just elevating us to the point where if there is this saying that nobody got fired because they hired McKinsey, right? So the marketing team in our organization is taken something like that, and there's like no company should nobody should get fired by hiring Discovery, right? So what would that mean in terms of top of mind brand building? So that is the Zen state for us to be at. And, not sure if that helps, but sort of just want to give some contours of how we think about marketing.
I mean, just a point on why B2C marketing. I think most of the marketing happens for B2C is when your product talks. So if your product is like scalable and it knows the global capacity, I think one of the important thing which works for B2C is referral marketing. Because referral marketing has really pumped up the kind of revenues which you can grow. Maybe you hear examples of Zerodha and stuff of the things, right? So referral marketing is really becoming an antidote in the market today. Just because if you can really spend and really know that you can incentivize your own customers and they can bring you 5 more, so you are actually taking care of your cost. So we kind of also follow this kind of a methodology, and that's how we have really spread it a lot today where we are.
Can we take one more question? Maybe one more question from the audience? Okay. Thank you, Vivek, Vinayak, Mitul, and Chiranth. I think it was so if I have to summarize, I think it came out very clearly that it's dependent on your product, I think Vivek was very stressful on the point that first you have to choose the market, right? So that thing came out clearly. Another thing I kind of observed that you have to create your own playbook. Vinayak said, "Maine karke seekha." Somebody said, "I did more research than usual." Somebody said, it's just the start of the journey. So you have to create your own playground. And the another thing I picked up is that many people are part of the journey. So service providers have a big role to play. And I can share from our experience being a bank, which is just one of the service provider. And I was telling Vivek and others this yesterday, saying we also do a range of quality of service. We don't do a very good job in all the times, which means that if you're productive at a service provider, you really add value, and that should be our endeavor. On that note, we'll end this discussion. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Prakash.